I truly believe that children who are born with disabilities, especially severe ones,
Yeah.
they were meant to.
Yeah.
Whether they
Right?
were born that way or as an environmental thing, like he came to teach us all an amazing lesson.
Hi, welcome to the other side of autism, Life Without Words. I am your host, Leanne, and I have a very special guest with me today. I'm really super excited to be having because I think it is also really important to hear from siblings who actually live with other siblings with disabilities. And so my special guest today is Carrie. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thanks for coming on today. I'm really super excited to be talking to you today because I think it is so important, not only for parents, but I think it's also important for siblings to know that they're not lost in the mix of all the chaos and the bustle and things like that. And so, so you told me a little bit about your brother and that he's 42 now.
He's 48. But yes,
48.
Close,
Yes.
close enough.
48. So what was it like living in a household with your brother? Like, kind of tell us, like, from the time, if you know when he was actually diagnosed and when your family actually got that diagnosis.
Yeah. So for me, and I think this is a really beautiful aspect, is I never knew my brother as any different. And I didn't really see him as being different because he's older than I am.
Okay.
So, and I have two older brothers, and one is, who's normal, but relatively normal. And then my brother who is both mentally disabled and autistic. Okay. And so I cannot remember a time where I looked at him differently or thought of him different. He was just Matt. Like, that's how he always was. But my first memory of Matt wasn't about Matt. It was about my parents.
Okay.
Because when he's that much older.
Okay.
Being 48, the diagnosis didn't come as fast. And so when he was born, he spent a lot of time in the birth canal. And when he came out, and my mom told me this story, I'm younger. So when he came out, the doctor said, hey, this child has brain damage. This child will probably never walk. He will probably never talk. He's never going to thrive. And my mom shares the story in that space of, like, every milestone that he made, they would say, well, he's not going to get any better than this. Every time, he's not going to get any better than this. They at first didn't even think he would live. And then it was, okay, well, he's probably never going to sit up on his own. And then he would sit up. And so he made milestones. It was just so much slower. So they really didn't understand why he was the way he was other than the birth canal. But my parents wanted answers. And my mom ended up getting pregnant shortly after. My brothers are only 15 months apart. And then I'm only 3 years younger than my oldest brother. So there was 3 of us in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And so when my second older brother came along, Matthew started doing things because he was watching and would start progressing as Jason, my second oldest, started to progress. And then when I came along, it even encouraged him more, but my parents wanted answers. So my very first memory is of my parents traveling all the time to different hospitals all over the world to try to get him answers as to what caused this and what were they diagnosing him as. Yeah. Because back then there are some genetic things that, like Fragile X, he didn't have Down syndrome, but there's a lot of different chromosomal things and genetic things that they were worried would get passed down or could be passed down. And it wasn't just to understand Matt and to help him as much as they could, but also to make sure, like, I had the information. So I was little, I was only 3 or 4, but eventually I would have children. And so my parents wanted the information to make sure that I wasn't, that I knew what I was facing if it was a genetic thing, or my brother knew what it was facing if he so decided to have children. So I remember getting passed along from family member to family member, aunts and uncles and grandparents, and my parents were always traveling. And I think that was probably the hardest for me because missing my mom and dad, or, not wanting to be with my uncles and aunts, but not wanting to spend the night. So
Right.
it is one of my core memories is always, and I feel like if you ask my mom might be like, it wasn't always, but as children, we perceive things, and it felt like we were always passed together. My older brother, Jay, and I were always together, but we were passed, like, stay at this person's house because we're taking Matt to find out what's wrong with him. Stay here. We have to go for tests in Boston to find out what's wrong with Matt, until they decided, like, okay, nothing's wrong. There's no diagnosis other than mentally disabled. And then later on, he got an autism diagnosis.
Oh, okay. So what age was he diagnosed with autism?
Yeah, I feel like it was around the age of 10 or 12 that he was diagnosed with autism. I feel like I was,
so his
like,
came
10 or
later in
12.
life.
It did.
Okay.
And I think it was because it wasn't as prevalent back then. Like, it was, 48 years ago when he was born, and it's not something that we're really looking for. And I don't know the research on it to say, but I feel like I remember that there wasn't a clear way to diagnosis then. It was if they had this characteristic, they did this, then they would start to diagnose them as autism. But Matt, I would say that if Matt wasn't mentally disabled, he probably would be more of a, medium, functioning autistic child, because he does, he eventually learned to speak, and he functions as a 4-year-old. Basically, he's a 48-year-old man in a 4-year-old's body.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not uncommon either,
Yeah.
especially with the other things going on and stuff like that as well. Like, my son he's 24 and he mentally is like 3.
Yeah.
So yeah. And you're right. Back then, they didn't know what autism was, and they weren't quite sure on how to help and things like that. And I know, like, through my journey of looking into that same thing, like, I went down that same road as your parents did. You're like, you want answers, and you also sit and you're like, well, I want to have more kids too, but like, I don't want, my child to, you don't know what the outcome is of that next child.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those things too. It's like, well, like your parents were saying, like, they wanted answers. So they knew, like, they could say, hey, this is what we're going on. And, a lot of it is too, I know that they are finding nowadays, there's kind of a mixture. So it's in the genes,
Right.
of the parents or somewhere along the line of the family, or it's actually they're starting to show that's more of an environmental thing as well, which is not, to be honest with you, is not surprising to me.
Right.
And I felt the same way, as your parents. I'm like, I want answers. I want to know why. I want to know this. And later in life too, I actually found out, once I met my biological dad, I actually his uncle has 2 boys actually on the spectrum.
Oh, wow.
And were diagnosed with autism.
Yeah.
So, in my case, it could be more of the gene thing, along those lines of not knowing, but,
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that my parents ever dug into whether it was environmental or whether it was genetic, because of the fact that there was nothing they were going to change about Matt.
Right.
And in general, for Matt, he got better as he got older, where in some autistic cases, the children are born perfectly normal, and then all of a sudden there's like the light goes out.
Yep.
And something just looks completely different. So Matt wasn't like that. So he was the opposite. They were like, he's not even going to live. And then all of a sudden he was thriving. And then he's never going to walk. And then he was walking. He's never going to talk. And then he was talking.
Yeah.
So my parents really focused on, like, this is just who Matt is, after they cleared all the genetic things. But I do know a lot of people in the autism world because of Matt and because of my connection. And the environmental factors are huge. They're huge.
Yeah. Well, people are doing testing nowadays to actually, like, trying to really figure out, because they have a test now that you can actually figure out whether it's a gene or if it's actually. So, they are testing more for the gene side of it. So when it comes back saying it's not the gene, people are now going, okay, Now let's look at our environment. Because
Right.
like you said, some kids are born just fine. So the same thing happened with my son. He was born fine,
Yeah.
making all the milestones. And all of a sudden, one day, boom, the lights went
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And
Which
you were
is,
like, what?
and I think that's really hard. Like, I would love to share a couple things you asked as a child. Like, what was it like? I think
Yeah.
aside from my parents leaving, they didn't leave, but to be able to,
Yeah.
go test Matt. One of the other things that I experienced was I saw the stress that my parents held as being parents of a special needs child. And it was very challenging, and I will say I was a kid at the time, and it would be really hard because you could see all the stress that they were holding and how much they had to
yes.
deal with. And it was very different dealing with a child who had outbursts or who, wet their pants or soiled their pants, and then having, children who were perfectly, quote unquote normal. And my mom had her own company. There was a lot going on. So Matt was always the center of focus, always. And it didn't necessarily bother us. And I'll tell you something, like we treated Matt completely normal in the sense that, like, me and my brother, in the sense that on Christmas morning, we'd be like, go wake mom up. Like we totally, like, we did not treat him any different than I would have treated any other sibling. And I think for me, and I got to experience this with my children as well. I have children. They're, none of them are on the spectrum. And I remember somebody said, what are you going to tell your kids about Matt? And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, how are you going to explain him to them? Because what I have noticed, and this was very challenging for me, is that not everybody understands children that are on the spectrum, that are severely autistic, that are mentally disabled. They don't understand that. And kids can be really cruel.
Yeah.
And I can remember this situation I want to say it was in elementary school. I was probably like 6th, 7th grade. Maybe I was just getting into middle school. I was at like a sleepover. And somebody started making fun of mentally disabled children, and they were calling them,
my goodness.
the R word. I don't want to offend anybody, but, and I don't know that I've ever been so mad as a child because of, like, hearing people. It was very obvious that people were making fun of special needs children and mentally disabled children.
Yeah.
And here it was my brother. And I could see why they were making fun of them and what that was, but I also knew who my brother was and how special he was. And that became very obvious that people just don't understand, and they make them uncomfortable. Some special needs kids can make them uncomfortable, especially mentally disabled. And in Matt's situation, he looks completely normal. He looks like a normal 48-year-old man.
Right.
He's actually incredibly handsome. We always are like, God, imagine if he was just normal. He would be like, we're always like, he would be the kid, crashing cars, having parties in fields, like with all these girls. He's an incredibly handsome man.
Oh.
And so it really confuses people.
Yeah,
and
I
I
bet.
remember when that person said, what are you going to tell your kids about Matt? And I was like, absolutely nothing. Nothing. No one had to explain to me as a child that Matt was different. No one had to sit me down and be like, okay, listen, Matt's mentally disabled. We just knew it. And I never sat my children down.
Yeah.
I never had to explain it to them. And they just know Matt is who Matt is. But what it has done, I think, for myself and my kids is it has created a whole different aspect of empathy, of understanding, of
that's amazing.
acceptance because of Matt.
Yeah.
Because they grew up with this uncle, and they would say it was like we would go to Disney and Matt and my kids would be the ones like hugging the characters. They would include him, he would do the same things as them, and they knew this. They knew he was excited about Santa. To this day, you can't convince him Santa doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what you say. We're like, no, like nobody comes down the chimney. And he's like, yes, he does. Santa's coming, Carrie. So it's a beautiful experience, but it also can be really challenging because of the emotional pull. And because, I know I cared so much about him, and I felt like I had to defend him at times when people didn't understand him.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said, because you're right. people are cruel and they
Yeah.
don't understand them. And because, like you said, he looks like a normal person.
Yeah, totally normal.
And I mean, I've experienced that myself. Brennan was just having an overload for the day, and oh gosh, I would say he was probably maybe like 5 or 6. And we were in the middle of a store and he just had a meltdown. He just straight up had a meltdown. I don't know if it was overstimulation of being in there. And I literally had somebody tell me, you need to spank them. They're being a brat. And I looked at her and I'm like, it is not the time to be messing with me right now.
Yeah.
And don't be judging, because you don't know what kind of disability a child can have just because they don't look like they have a disability.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
My brother was,
I get it.
He was, God, he had to have been in his 30s. And with children with disabilities, they teach them life skills.
Yeah.
They don't teach them. He doesn't know how to read.
Right.
He doesn't know how to spell. He can spell his own name. That's it. It's very different. And he was waiting in line. And this was a period of time, like I'm sure you know, and I don't know if your son has experienced this, but a lot of autistic children have violent streaks to them. And they have extreme anger and rage and violence.
Sometimes when the hormones hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my brother was going through one of those periods and they had taught him these life skills about staying in line. Like that's what they were focusing on. And my mom had him in a store and they were waiting to check out for something. He was getting something. I don't even remember what it was. And a lady cut in front of them. And my brother said, she just cut us. And my mom was like, yes, I know, it's fine. And he's like, no, she just cut us. She's not supposed to cut us. And he was he's loud. And the woman turned around and started screaming at him that he was like a rude, man. And how could he do this? And my mom, the same reaction, like, can't you cannot tell me you can't see that this is not a normal human. Like there is something, he's not the way you think he is. He has special needs, And so it is, I think for the family members, it is about being an advocate for their son, their brother, their sister, whoever it is, their child. And I think that gives us a whole nother level of responsibility. And for some people, that's very hard. I had a friend in high school who had a disabled brother and she was embarrassed by him.
That can happen too.
And that was one of the things I've never felt. It's always been truly amazing, but I think it's a very unique experience that I feel truly blessed for getting to go through. Having a brother like that has changed my perspective of life and for how I've lived life and treated people, for sure.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I love that. And I agree with you 100%. I have a younger son. And the one thing that I found was siblings that have a sibling with a disability, not all of them, but a good majority of them have such a powerful bond.
Yes.
And I have found that, there were things that my younger son could get my older son to do. Like, I wanted to read to him. I loved reading to him. Like that was just such a motherly thing that I wanted to do. Yeah. But he would not sit still. He was like, I'm not having it. Even at bedtime, his is like, nope, it's bedtime. And so, but my son could sit and he'd start reading. And then my oldest would just sit there. Yeah. And he would just listen to my son read. And I'm just like, wait a minute, that's my job. But, it also warmed my heart as well because my younger son too, he's like, this is my brother. Yeah. And I didn't treat them any different. Like you were saying, I didn't treat my brother any different. He was my brother. And that's how it was with my kids. I've never treated Brennan like he has autism. I've always just treated him like a regular child. We just had to figure out different ways to help him and to get him to understand things. And, I love that your mom, like she was trying to calm him down because you're right. They're taught and their structures and stuff like that. And then, so he was like, that lady cut in front of us. Yeah, that's rude, and
there's no other way.
There was,
it is just that one
and there
way,
was exactly no other way at all. And it's like, and so it's hard, but I, really appreciate it that you came on and like shared your story with us. It's truly been amazing to hear your side of things. That was one of the things that I wanted to do with this podcast is, I want to let siblings know that, they're not alone. It's, and it's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to have those emotions, and to be able to run through them and stuff. So, don't be ashamed of them. Just work through them, or, if you can go to your parents, if you feel comfortable enough, or maybe a counselor or something like that, to be able to go through and just have those conversations, because it's just normal. You're a human, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay to, and, like you said, it's like, as a kid, you're like, they were gone forever.
Yeah, and they probably weren't, but that was my perspective of it. They were always gone. Yeah.
You're like, man, where are my parents going again? Or like, oh, I know where they're going again. Like, what about us, kind of thing, and stuff like that. So I think that's beautifully said. I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, I know your other brother isn't here or anything to speak on his behalf of experience, but like as a sibling with having two brothers, like, how do you feel that he was with everything as well?
Yeah, Jay and I, my other older brother, we have very similar experiences. Same thing. He was always protective of him. We always included him. And one of the things that I think as siblings that some of us know and we forget on is that my parents are going to pass away one day.
Right.
More than likely before my brother.
Yes.
And so for Jay and I, one of our things we have always known, we didn't just protect Matt when he was younger. We are his guardians and protectors when my parents are gone. So that's a beautiful experience for us to be able to hold in this beautiful honor. So I know Jay feels the same way. We had the same, very similar experiences. And like you said, Matt's really close to us. So like when we show up, if he gets angry about something or if he's getting super silly, my older brother, all he has to say is Matt. And he's like, I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry. I'm being a good boy, right? I'm being a good boy. So he really does look to us. It's like we have this amazing bond that he only sees the love in it, because I truly believe that children who are born with disabilities, especially severe ones, they were meant to. Yeah. Whether they were born that way or as an environmental thing, like he came to teach us all an amazing lesson. He is a soul that came here to teach us an amazing lesson. And so he feels that loving bond, and Jay and I have absolutely supported it. We absolutely love him. He is a priority. We see him when we can. But he's definitely one of those, very special to both of us. And I think it also made mine and Jay's bond stronger because in one sense, I'm not the youngest child. I'm the middle child because Matt's younger than I am mentally. In a whole other sense, there was a lot of time it was just Jay and I because Matt's different. So it's a really different dynamic. Like, in our state, at least, it is Jay and I who will have to take care of Matt, but it's also just Jay and I who can take care of my parents. Matt's not involved in that.
Right. Yeah.
So, like my mom always says, one of her biggest things is I will forever have a child that needs to be taken care of. And so it is a different dynamic when one of your siblings never grows up, can never grow up. And so, I think he has a very similar experience, and it has made him and I closer as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for, telling us your story. I really appreciate it. And if you like what we had to say today, please hit the subscribe button. We would love to have you follow us. Please also comment below. We would love to hear your thoughts as well. And please don't forget, if there's a topic that you are interested in, I would love to hear that as well. So thanks again.